Please be seated. I contemplated earlier this week beginning this sermon by asking everyone to pull out the pew Bible in front of them, and then remembered that not everyone grew up in the Baptist church doing Bible drills. So I will just remind you that there is a Bible in your pew right in front of you. It's the darker red book. And if you were to look for the Gospel of John in it, then you would turn about 3/4 of the way into that book. And the reason I bring that up today is because our gospel lesson is a mere 5 verses. And it ends with this new commandment to love one another, just as Christ has loved us, to love one another, and that by this people will know that we are Jesus' disciples, by our love for one another. To really understand what that love looks like, I think that it's helpful to look just at this one chapter of John, the 13th chapter of John, and to remember that it starts with Jesus washing the disciples' feet. And from there, it moves to Jesus foretelling Judas's betrayal. And then it moves to this new commandment to love one another, and then it finishes with Jesus foretelling Peter's denial. And so just in this one chapter of John, what love looks like, what Jesus shows us love looks like, is serving one another. It looks dirty and difficult. It looks like serving even the people who will betray you and deny you. It's a difficult love. It's a hard love. Our lectionary today sets the scene by saying Judas went out. Judas went out. And if you forgot the story before, then you might think that he had just gone out to pick up some olive oil. But no, Judas has left to tell the authorities where Jesus is so that he can be arrested and killed. But not before Jesus knowingly washes the feet of Judas. Knowing what's about to happen, washes the feet of Judas. I like to look at this commandment of love alongside our reading from Acts today, because the story from Acts is not just about food or circumcision or Gentiles, but about our natural proclivity to size each other up, to look at someone and compare how they contrast to you, to wonder aloud or in the corners of your heart whether they are in or they are out. It's about our desire to break bread with people who affirm our own worldviews so that we can be reminded of how enlightened we are, or about our willingness to give money to or volunteer for organizations that serve a certain segment of the population we care about. It is about our being willing to love people who walk in these doors with the understanding that when they come in, we hope they affirm and become part of one of us, that they look more like one of us, that they conform to our status quo. But that's not the kind of love that Jesus invites us into in this gospel text today. Jesus says that we should love one another as Jesus has loved us. He says that by this, people will know that we are disciples by our love for one another. And the voice from heaven that speaks to Peter not once but 3 times says what God has proclaimed clean, do not call profane. And the Holy Spirit says not to make a distinction between them and us. So I just want to name with you this morning that this love is hard. And yes, some love comes easily and naturally and quickly, and I love that kind of love. It's the kind of love that encourages to show up on Sunday morning, to support our friends in their time of need, to pray for the people that we care for, Those are good and lovely things, and we should do them because we are good and lovely people. But the Jesus-following love, the kind of love that washes the feet of people who are going to betray you and deny you, that is hard love. Earlier in the Bible, Jesus says, love your enemies. And I just want to confess that I don't really want to most days. I don't want to love my enemies. I don't want to wash the feet of most people, but much less people that might betray or deny me. I think that's asking a little too much of me most days. And sure, I want to be the kind of person that can love her enemies and the kind of person that can wash anyone's feet without distinction. But most days, every day, I fall short of that. I wish that there were some kind of easy 5-step plan that I could give you now to love more like Jesus, so that we could walk out of this nave and walk into the world and change the world with that Jesus-following love. But if there were a 5-step plan, then it wouldn't be hard. The love that I've just named being hard, it would take away from all of that. It would not be true. And so instead, what I am inviting myself and inviting all of you to do this week is to notice every time love is hard. To notice and name every time love is hard. When you have uncharitable thoughts about that acquaintance on Facebook or that public figure or maybe even your family member, notice that love is hard. When you decide to choose the option that is going to require the least of you, and perhaps for very good reason, notice that love is hard. When someone treats you with contempt instead of kindness, notice that love is hard. Notice it and name it, knowing that when you name that love is hard, that the God who sees all things and hears all things sees and hears you say, love is hard. And in that moment, that the God whose love knows no bounds, who loves us so much more than we could ever ask or imagine, will hold you in those almighty hands and say, I know. I know. Amen.